Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Racing Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. Glad to see that everyone is here, can join us this evening. We're going to jump into this week's report from Trendlines, from DAT Trendlines. We are showing that this week that the percentage in the national price of diesel fuel has dropped ever so slightly by zero point 0.7 percentage points, showing that the national average price for diesel fuel checks in at $5.57 per gallon. Um, Moving down, we're showing that spot rates hold steady for last week after falling for most of the new year. Van and reefer line haul rates maintained their gains from the road check week. After taking time off during International Road Check Week, carrier equipment posts bounced back as carriers returned to the market to take advantage of the higher end of the month shipping volumes prior to the week's shorter shipping week. Produce season is still off to a cool start for reefers, while the flatbed market continues to track closely with 2018 numbers, when flatbeds drove the bull market and the rate rally for the first half of the year. So we're going to take a look and see how those rates were performing across the board, in particular to segment type, starting off with dry vans. We're showing that the national average rate for dry vans coming out of the northeastern corridor checks in at $2.62 per mile. We're showing that coming out of the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states that national average rate checks in at $2.76. Moving out of the Midwest area of the country, we're showing that the average spot market for dry vans is at $3.03. Coming in from the South Central region, we're showing that the average rate checks in at $2.79. And wrapping up, coming out of the West Coast, we're showing that the average rate checks in at $2.66 per mile. Shifting gears and jumping over to the flatbed portion of the report, we're showing that the average coming out of the northeastern corridor checks in at $3.34 per mile. Moving down to the mid-Atlantic states, we're showing that the average outbound rate checks in at $3.60 per mile for flatbeds. Jumping back up into the Midwest, we're showing that the average outbound rate comes in at $3.69. Moving down to the South Central region, we're showing average outbound rates for flatbeds at $3.36. And coming out of that West Coast, we're showing an average outbound rate of $2.94. Shifting gears and jumping back over to the temperature controlled or reefer portion of the report, we're showing that coming out of the northeastern corridor, we're showing that average outbound spot market rate comes in at $2.89. Moving out of the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states, we're showing that rate checks in at $2.94. Coming in out of the coming out of the Midwest, we're showing average outbound rates for reefers at $3.53. That leads the nation. Moving down to the South Central region, that average rate for reefers is at $3.29. And wrapping up, coming out of the West Coast, we're showing an average outbound rate at $3.05. And without any further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome in my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing well. How are you, Rico?
Doing great, doing great. I'm really excited to have our good friend and legal expert back on the show joining us this evening. But before we get Hank back on, how are things going for you guys up on north of the border there?
You know, domestic freight's getting a little slower than it was. Rates are not what they were, but there's still a fair amount of business overall. Everybody's busy. Fuel is really expensive up here. It's running us not at the pump without discounts or anything and there's a tax in there that we get back, or part of it, which is I think about 7%, and it's running around 202, 209 a gallon in Ontario right now, or a liter. I'm sorry, and there's to your gallon, it's 3.8 liters to a U.S. gallon. So it's almost 4 gallons. And that's Canadian funds. So by the time you convert it, it's not far off $10 a gallon.
Well, I don't want to keep our guests waiting.
No, neither do I.
I don't want to keep him waiting. It's always a great time, and we never seem to have enough time whenever we have Hank on with us. So without any further ado, we want to welcome in our resident legal expert, Mr. Hank Seaton. Good evening, Hank. How are you?
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Doing
great.
well.
It's always
doing
great
well.
to have you on the show.
Before we jump into it, Hank, I just want to let all of our watchers and everyone that's looking in and turning into the show that we have the chat feature up and running. If you want to ask a question of Hank, just type it into the chat and we will get it up so that Hank can get a chance to answer your question. Hank is our resident legal expert, so we talk all things whenever we have Hank on. All things transportation law is on the table. So if you ever had a legal transportation question, whether it comes to contracts, detention, anything transportation law related, now is an excellent time to maybe get your question in, to ask that question, and we have a man here that can give you some actual actionable information to help you on your way. So
probably the best in the business, Rico. I know that from experience. And ladies and gentlemen that are watching this, this is your chance to get some free legal advice from one of the top transportation lawyers in all America. And, you know, Traffics has used Hank Seaton for years, and he's done a phenomenal job for us. So if you've got any questions, let them fly. This is your opportunity.
And thank goodness, I think we got all of our platforms up and running. So we're streaming live right now on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook, and so and Twitter as well. So we're live across all of our different platforms. So if anyone has a question, just type it into the chat on whichever relative platform that you're on, and hopefully we should be able to see it on this side, and we'll get it up and on board. All right, Hank. With that being said, we got all the formalities out of the way. What are some different things that are coming down the pike that we might need to be aware of or be conscious of that's coming from regulatory issues out of Washington, D.C.? Is there anything that we might have passed by and might need to be taking a closer look at to make sure that it's we doesn't allow things to slip by us that we need to be?
One thing that's concerning to me, and I haven't seen it get the press that I had thought it might. We all know about California AB 5, which is a code for a California provision that would end the independent contractor model under a special ABC test. Enforcement of that in California, where Lord knows there may be 100,000 owner-operators involved, has been stayed because even taking the case is being considered by the Supreme Court. So there's a lot of disruption in the California owner-operator market, people trying to switch out of it, get their own authority, but the fat lady hadn't sung, so to speak, yet. The Supreme Court, which we all know has got a whole bunch of other challenges that people can be on one side or another, yet feel very fervently about, involves when states' rights trumps federal rights. Right. Well, in this area, if you're a supporter of the independent contractor model, you want the court to hold that Commerce Clause means we ought to have uniform rules in every state, and that you can't have one rule in California and another one in Tennessee. I don't think the Supreme Court really wants to take too many of those because they're very divisive. So I think that may be the reason they asked the Solicitor General, who's an arm of the Attorney General's office, to file a brief on whether it was appropriate to even consider it. Well, the Solicitor General this past week came down with two opinions in two really important cases. One was on AB 5, and they said that they didn't think the efforts of California justified the court overturning their decision. Now, the court hadn't acted on it, but one would think if they asked the Solicitor General, chances are they'd follow his request and would think twice before they took up the appeal of the case. The second case that the Supreme Court did the same thing with is a C.H. Robinson case, in which I think it was poorly presented, but C.H. Robinson said we shouldn't have up supply chain liability for negligently selecting a carrier as long as the FMCSA lets them operate. And I think that is absolutely true. As a consumer, you shouldn't be a broker or a shipper or somebody getting a load of mulch moved in your neighborhood to go check out to somebody that the government has said is licensed, authorized, and insured. Well, lo and behold, the Solicitor General came down and said he didn't think that one should be reviewed either. So on those two issues, one which affects access of small people to freight, that would mean that we have to continue to live through the old idea of is a little guy without a safety rating unhireable? Does that tilt the finger towards the big guys who can take the $50 million judgments? So I don't see any relief coming from either one of those. It's a sad fact to think that we're 2 years almost into the Biden administration, and there hadn't been any real harm done to us on many of the issues. But these two things at the court kind of trouble me, because if those two cases aren't heard by the Supremes, we'll see a continuation of the nuclear judgments and the enforcement of state law. And of course, that plays itself out in $25,000 premium for small guys. And we'll see not only California, but other similar nanny states wanting to do away with the owner-operator model. And so I think those are two of the really key issues. And then kind of flapping off of those are cost of inflation, the cost of fuel, the cost of new and used units. And it seems as though everything the government is sponsoring is more concerned about environmental laws or local transit laws than it is trying to fix the supply chain. I think a lot of the time the truckers get blamed for the supply chain problem, and really their hard time is being created by it, particularly the idea of detention. Some real progress is being made over at the Federal Maritime Commission in terms of addressing steamship line abuses on charging for detained trailers. I wish we had a similarly proactive agency on the trucking side that would see that if you didn't get unloaded in time, you got paid for it. So
yeah, look how many container lines or steamship lines there are, and look how many truck lines. And you'd never get all the tens of thousands of truckers to agree on anything.
Well, I think that at the port level, there's some real effort now by the dray carriers to say, well, the big shippers got some relief. Most of these steamship lines are foreign steamship lines, and they're just hoping you don't turn that box in because it's worth $100 a day plus. And it's more palatable, I think, for them to do the regulation over at the FMC. But I don't know. I'd be interested in hearing from the folks.
Hank, let me ask you a question. If AB 5 really and truly came to fruition, and I think it's everybody probably listening to this show, including my co-host and mine, our worst nightmare, that this comes to fruition, because I just, if you think that the supply chain is messed up now, let this happen. Like what happens to all and you and I have spoken about this before, the produce truckers, so many of them are independents, and that work for a company, they lease on with a company. What would happen, and this has been a vision of mine for years and years, is to have a cooperative. And if you had 50 truckers that all banded together and called it, Eastern Tennessee Cooperative. So being a cooperative, they all own part of it. How would that fly to fight AB5?
To fight AB5?
Yep.
I'm not sure if you wanted to everybody share the other guy's productivity and try to get around the law so that they were all owners, had an ownership stake, and then received a payment that was really a share if they made profit. I think that you would immediately see the pro-labor movement and the people who have just a different view that, like the owner-operator issue, from their point of view, these people are being taken advantage of, that they're really not going to get any skin in the game. I guess the question really becomes, and this is something, Chuck, we've been working on. There needs to be a way for small guys to band together and get the benefit of a captive or cooperative for insurance. I just don't really think there's any. You're starting off with your own business with two hands tied behind you. If you were leased on to somebody who was paying $4,000 or $5,000 for insurance, and now you're getting brokered loads that 15% is going to have to be deferred by what $1,000 increase in your premium. I just think that getting out fair and reasonable insurance to small guys has been a challenge.
Oh, definitely.
I was talking this week with some about it, and some agents want to work for little guys simply say, hey, look, you got to have enough spend already accumulated to make it attractive. People are selling this stuff cheaper by the dozen, and there's just hard to get someone who's altruistic enough to come in and say, well, gee, I'll get an LOC for $4 million to help you guys get started, so the insurance company will look at you. And it's an economic issue. That's why I'm saying at some point, if we're going to subsidize crops, if we're going to subsidize hopefully North American energy independence, if we're going to give everybody a fair and equal chance, then maybe we need to address some of these economic abuses that always seem to tilt the scale in favor of the large guys. And insurance is certainly one.
Yeah, you know what? And I understand it from the insurance company's perspective, because, of course, these nuclear settlements have hurt they've hurt the insurance companies and the reinsurance companies. There's so many people out there that are just trying to steal money. We've all heard of that case down in Louisiana. It was a whole scam. People trying to get into crashes with big trucks. And there were chiropractors and lawyers and doctors and a whole cast of characters involved. And that's one of the ones that it happens all the time. And some of them for a lot of money, even when the trucker's not at fault. So I do understand. I had.
No, I didn't mean to trump over you. I just saying I had dinner in New Orleans, the truck company owner who's heavily involved in all of that. And that was just the worst case of a crime. It just staged, but it happens all too frequently.
Yes, the only difference with this one, they brought it to the public's attention. There's so many of these things never even get found out. There's all sorts of scams, and that's what costs the truckers so much money for insurance. They're paying for all these scams. And the insurance company seem to be very happy to write smaller checks so these guys go away. But at the end of the day, that's the trucker's money.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm thinking,
Well, their cost of administration is through the roof. I mean, if they pay out 50% in claims, they're having a bad day administrative costs.
yeah, I agree. And we were with an insurance company that I actually liked, and I can't say their name on the air because I don't want to get sued. But it starts with Z, and I'm not going to say anymore. And I think it's a city in Switzerland, but I'm not going to say anymore. And they were a good insurance company, except they paid every darn claim, even when it wasn't our fault. And I said to them one day, I said, "What are you doing?" And they go, "You know what? It's so much cheaper for us to just give this guy $20,000 and let him go away." And I go, "But that goes against my loss run. I didn't do anything wrong." But that's how they operated. There was no fight left in the dog. And that seems to go on all over the place.
Well, I can't defend my profession. It seems like if somebody's got a slip and fall, they'll have a pretrial order that says that it'll go on for 2 years worth of depositions and crap like that before it ever gets to the trial. So you can see why somebody like, sure,
Yeah.
you're talking about Geneva or something in Switzerland would say, "Oh, listen, let's not be too high-handed. If we can get rid of grand, it's
Exactly.
right." Of course, it comes back against you, and it hits you next year.
Right. Well, because it's on your loss run report, and that's how they judge you. And as you know, when you're running a truck line, so it's very difficult. And you and I have talked about captives, and we've talked about them with our friend Tommy Rook. I'm still not sold on captives. I'm just, my belief
Still
is
not sold on what?
on insurance captives. What's been your experience with them as a lawyer?
Well, I've had a couple of bad experiences in terms of sick turning bad. You've got to really manage it because in the way it's structured, because one bad apple can destroy
Right.
the whole case. And you would think that when I try to shop captives, as I've tried to find the groups that wrote them to say, "Hey, look, this little trade association's made up of people who've been around for a while. They've got they may not have 200 trucks, but put them together and they got 400, and they're best in class."
Right.
And it seems like the people that want to write captives want diversity. They don't want the 20 best auto haulers. They'd rather have a blended group. And, that's what's kind of scary with me. I wouldn't want to be in a captive with somebody that hauled butyllithium that can blow up a small town. But if you don't watch out,
I get it.
they'll put one of them in there with you. And it's not all the same breed of cats.
Well, what really, we had an experience on our brokerage side where we gave a shipment of electronics to a very good carrier who had it locked. It was in a locked yard on a Saturday night. It had come in from California to Canada, and it was worth a lot of money. I think it was worth about $200,000. And the trailer disappeared out of a locked yard. So you always know that these type of things, there's 100 trailers in the yard. How did the crook know that the trailer contained $200,000 worth of electronics? And we went after the carrier and we said, "Listen, we need a letter from your insurance company saying you're covering this." And the captive wouldn't do it. And that would just turn me right off.
But the captive wouldn't say they're covering the loss?
Nope. Because they had to figure it out themselves because he was a new member of the captive.
Yeah, well, what I see so often, particularly, and not just in captive underwriting, but with even the household names, particularly the ones from cities in England, not
Yes.
necessarily. Those English seem to think that any kind of missing cargo has to be an inside job, and there's an exclusion for that.
Yeah, well, uh, unfortunately, I think that a lot of times, somewhere along the line, cargo theft is somewhere along the line an inside job. We don't know where it is. It could be at the shipper's, the shipper's office. It could be the custom broker if you have a cross-border um, shipment. It could be the driver. You've got so many. You've got two local or drayage drivers on each end. They know about it. You've got even if it's one driver takes it straight through, he knows about it. There's a number of people that know about it. A whole bunch of dispatch people know about it. So where is the chain of trust broken? It's a tough one.
Well, it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. There's used to be, I think it was a Continental Tire plant down in Memphis, and
Right.
they were having real theft problems, and it got to be so silly. You just say, well, go over there about Two-Way, which is a little town about 50 miles outside Memphis. You'll find the trailer there in 3 days. I mean, it was obviously thank you for that load. Can I have another? And the people were too silly to figure it out until about the sixth or seventh load.
Yeah. And that gets very expensive. I remember years ago, through our brokerage arm, we were hauling out of a place in California, and gangs had infiltrated the company. They were shipping computers, and they had put the gangs on the dock that were working loading the trailers were putting tracking devices inside the trailers. And that's how
New use for LoJack, right?
And what they would do is when drivers stop to go to the bathroom or whatever, and there's nobody in the truck, and they would just steal a tractor and trailer. And then they went to it had to be a team, and one person had to be in the truck at all times. But drivers in the bunk, and he's been in there for 6 or 7 hours, and he notices the truck stops and nature calls, and he's going to run in, and they're watching for it. And it got to a point where the shipper, this computer company, actually signed a contract with all their carriers that they would only hold them for a certain value, because it was just getting impossible to find. None of the carriers wanted to touch the product. It was just too dangerous. Now, I do see a question here from one of our listeners, Steve. Do you predict that insurance will double or triple in the next 2 years, providing small owner operators going out of business? I don't think it'll double or triple. What's your opinion, Hank and Rico?
It seems to me that it's outrageous now. Thankfully, I think they have stifled the idea of upping the insurance requirements. I think that would have been particularly hard on small guys. But I think on a comparative scale, the longtime driver, the guy at Nastic who's got the 14-year pin, is probably an owner operator. And I think those guys are, if they're not ready to sell their trucks and hit the farm, and they want to give it another go, are going to have a real hard time getting the insurance rates they deserve. If you go out and you profile a guy, and I have people call me and say, "Hey, what's wrong with this picture? I've gone out to get my own authority. I've got all these millions of miles. I've never had a claim, and they're quoting me. The average is 20 is a good rate. It goes up from there. You can find somebody to write you, and they don't cancel you. And I mean, that's just really a substandard market. I don't know how you deal with it, but clearly, at some point, insurers are going to jump into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insurance companies will jump back into it when all of a sudden they start making some money again. Then everybody will be in it. But one thing I do want to warn our listeners, be careful jumping ship to somebody that is either new in truck insurance or has just jumped back into it and hasn't been in it for a long time. Because what you'll find with those companies is they usually they're not in it for the long term. What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, there are some legacy underwriters. Again, I won't admit them. They've been in it for the long term. It's been, they call a bad law firm Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. This ought to be the name for some of these bad insurance groups.
Right.
Their policies have still are still where's Waldo for the exclusions, and they get away with it. So, yeah, I think you're right. There are particularly some people in the distress market game that are writing people, and they're not to be trusted.
Yeah, and I really think that when you're purchasing insurance, you really want to be buying insurance, and it's a partnership between you and the insurance company, and you don't want, if God forbid you have a bad wreck, you don't want to be out of business. Things happen.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to try to, if you're gonna, and Hank, you can correct me if I'm wrong as well. I think if you're gonna vet your insurance company, you want to definitely make sure that you're AM Best, see what their record is on
Yes.
AM Best and what their rating is according to them, and maybe even go back and if there's any way possible, look at some of the reviews. I think that now that there are a lot of reviews available online that you can find out about different companies and stuff like that, and I think that that's a pretty good way to help you also just on a practical way to kind of just vet the insurance company.
I mean, there are all kinds of internet. Who would have thought that we'd be live on Twitter? I don't even know what Twitter does other than they kick Trump out. But I mean, with all of the free opinion, you would think that people would be able to say, well, they may be a household name, but the cargo claims division just won't pay a claim, or the war stories. I hear the war stories. I don't write them up and try to make them the outrage of the day. But there's some people who really are getting the short end of the stick on claims. When you talked about a partnership, that's the real difference between an owner operator and a company that's successful about keeping these guys as business partners, as opposed to the few guys who want to make the profit margin, breaking it over the worker's back. Well, it's the same thing with the insurance company. If the insurance company says, I'm just looking at my ROI, and, as long as there are more carriers than there are insurers, Dewey, Cheatham and Howe.
Yeah, good point. Now, one of the things that I really believe in is that you use an agent and a good insurance agent that specializes in truck insurance. I've actually met Rico's insurance agent, and I think that it's really important to have somebody in your corner that understands truck insurance. I know you can buy it online, just like buying a whole bunch of other things, but you don't have that relationship with the agent or broker who's shopping around on your behalf and telling you, hey, Rico, this is cheap, but it's not good insurance. And then you make up your own mind.
Yeah, I think you're right. Another thing is, depending upon your size, it's probably a good idea to not just go to one insurance underwriter, particularly one broker, and have that insurance broker says, well, I want the right to survey the industry. Sometimes you got to have a little competition out there.
You can't do that in Canada. It's a different market up here. I found out the hard way. So what happens is when they really don't like you using pitching broker against broker, but when I go to my broker and I say, listen, I need truck insurance for this many trucks, and he goes to, let's say he goes to Intact and he goes to, Fireman's, and he goes to Zurich, and he goes to a few more. If he goes to those insurance providers on our behalf, we're locked in. Nobody else can quote our business but that agent. They don't want to be quoting 12 different agents for the same trucking company.
Oh, I understand. It's the same here. It's kind of like it is in real estate in terms of who first crosses the door. But your incumbent underwriter will say, hey, look, I want an exclusive to approach these 6 markets. And, at that point, there's a little bit of hunger in terms of making a sale. They may not get all of it. I'm just saying some competition, some option. You may not have many options, but
we don't. It's a little bit different a market here because in Ontario there's only about maybe 4, tops 5, if there's that many, that will insure trucks that are going from Ontario into the U.S.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, there's just nobody wants to. As a matter of fact, one of our executives today made a call to Ideal Lease, which is part of Navistar, about renting a truck on short term. And they said, no, we'll only do a long-term lease because we don't want the liability, even though we have to provide the insurance because we are a for-hire carrier. We put the insurance on, but they don't want to take the responsibility of the liability of sending their trucks to the U.S. unless it's on a long-term lease.
Hank, I got a quick since Chuck just said that jogged my memory to a certain situation with renting trucks. As far as adding people on when you're renting a truck, adding a company on as a additionally insured or hired vehicles. What is there a conundrum that people need to be aware of when it comes to that? Or I got a little bit of pushback from when I was trying to add I believe it was right. I believe I was having a little bit of a pushback with my insurance company when I was trying to add them on to my policy.
Well, major issues are in that area are, underwriting criteria. Obviously, a lot of them want to verify the background of who you're hiring to be sure that your new hire is qualified. What I see as a frequent problem is every agent I know, when you get his number, it says you can't bind coverage until you talk to me. And I've had a lot of people over the time who went out and hired on a new owner operator and didn't add him immediately to the policy, and he hit something, and the insurance company said it was a scheduled vehicle policy. They may have to pay the auto liability, but they want the cargo. And if they pay the auto liability, they turn around and try to take it out of their insurance hide. So, that's just one more hassle if you write a policy on a specified vehicle.
Yeah, I think that was the pushback that they were saying, that they wanted to have a unit number or something to that effect.
And you see what happens is, from their point of view, if they write if they don't watch their P's and Q's, you'll get some scamster who will put 10 placards on a truck and insure one truck.
Right.
Or say, I thought he had his own insurance. You know how that goes.
Okay.
There was a character like that up in Canada about 15, 20 years ago, and he had a large fleet of probably 300-400 trucks. And of course, the insurance company didn't realize that what a shyster he was, and he was selling pink slips, insurance slips, to people, and people would buy them for $1,000 a month. And he wasn't reporting it to the insurance company. And then finally they caught him.
Yeah.
Now I got a question. Someone just had sent me a text message, and they was wanting to know. I'm glad that we got you on, Hank. They was asking a question. It basically, the question goes like this: when you're under a load and they have been with the broker that they're dealing with, they've done multiple loads for that broker. And every time they've had a situation with detention and they can't get paid on detention, but now they have another load with the same particular broker and they don't want to deliver the load until they have some type of agreement when it comes to the detention.
They're holding it hostage.
They're holding up the
Hey, now, wait a minute. One man's hostage is another man's lien. Don't you know that?
Okay.
No. Look. People run into that with great frequency, and shame on you. In contracts, a lot of it's what they put in there, and some of it's what they leave out. And these guys that don't put in for any detention, and you take the load, you're up to saying, well, it is a game of hostage. Well, and I've heard people say, well, I can't find that truck, and I'm not really very incentive to go look for it unless you pay me to do so. But there is in the statute, and of course, most of the time, your contract you sign says you waive all your statutory rights. But if you can get away without doing that, there is a lien on the load for the charges due on that load. Okay, so you can say, I think probably with a straight face, now look, I want to have some detention, or I'm going to put this in a warehouse and let the court work this out. Ultimately, does that smell like a little bit of a hijack? Yes, but is there a legal basis for some of it? Quite possible.
If you put it in the warehouse, correct, Hank? Because it's
yeah. I mean, you can't say it's riding around the country. At that point, it smells more like a sale. I have kind of moderated my position on the fact that the carriers always get paid, and it's in large part because of all of the abuses I see with these collection agencies that just go out and say, well, my client's name's not on the bill of lading, but I don't care, he still gets paid. He should have known better, but I don't care, he still gets paid. I think if you're a little guy and you get a load off of a broker, you need to get your name on the bill of lading.
No,
and if you get there and some stranger's name's on the bill of lading, you need to get it straightened out before you deliver the load.
Now, what happens if you just put your name on the bill of lading? You put Seaton's Trucking.
Well, I mean, at least at that point, whoever's paying the bill has noticed that this thing may have been double brokered, unless somebody has whitened off the thing. But I mean, I can tell you from working some hijacks on the famous copper wire cases that at some point the shipper was culpable by not wanting to see the name on the side of the door and matching it up with the bill. The law says that you don't have to issue a bill of lading, but it says that the carrier has to deliver a receipt with his name on it. And I think we all realize that 50% of the loads don't have the name of the carrier on it.
I would say about 80%.
From a practical standpoint, Hank, let me break this scenario down a little bit. and so we might be able to help some people. Normally, when you go and you pick up a load, we'll say 3 copies of the bill of lading.
Yep.
There's a copy that is signed there at the shipper, and then there's 2 that they normally give to you for your possession. One of course, is your copy, and one is for the consignee.
Yep.
On those 3 different bill of ladings, which one of those is the most important one to make sure that you put your name on as far as the carrier of record? The one that's left at the one.
Well,
the
old last century thing was that was carbon paper, and your name went through all 3 copies.
Oh no, not anymore.
Well, if it were me, I would tell, because all 3 of them are important. The first one is important for collection purposes, because if you don't get paid and you want recourse and Section 7 isn't signed, you're going to have to basically prove that you picked it up. Now, anybody can go take his number 2 copy and write his name on it when he wants to file suit. Somebody's going to be smart enough to go back to the shipper and say, did he show up and sign on as Freight Ferry 102, or did he put his name on at the time? I wrote about this back in 2003, but nothing's changed. And I said that what carriers ought to do is follow the COWS formula, and that stood for publish their own conditions on their website, and use a POD stamp on what they sent in as proof of delivery. Just put a stamp on it. If you get something that's squirrely and you're Green Crescent, put a stamp. Evidence of service provided by Green Crescent. So that what goes back through the freight system shows that you were the service provider. Now that does a couple of things for you, Rico. Number one, it keeps your sleazy cargo insurance company from trying to say you weren't party to the contract because your name's on the bill. Number two, if you do have to go up supply chain and take recourse to somebody or assist the government in procuring a fraud, somebody's now tampered with the bill if they scratch your name off. You can't tamper with a bill of lading. So it's just a good reason for setting up the practice. FedEx and UPS would never not get their name on shipping documents.
Well, you use their bill of lading. They give them out to customers just the way the LTL carriers used to give them out to customers. They used to get pads of bills of lading. And if you remember back in the old days, the shippers used to cross out their name and put whoever else because they didn't want to pay for a bill of lading.
Well, yeah, I understand that. And from the point of view that you're in, Chuck, I've said, hey, if Mr. Shipper is going to make you responsible as a broker for the cargo claims, you ought to issue a bill of lading as a freight forwarder. Right. But by the same token, if you issue a bill of lading as a freight forwarder with the origin and destination, you ought to put on it pickup carrier with the name of the pickup carrier to avoid the theft problem. Because somehow, some way, consignor and the legitimate broker and the legitimate carrier have to work together to cut down on this theft.
Yeah, and the double brokering and triple brokering going on now, you hear about it every day.
Yeah, and in terms of frequency, freight charge collection is the most active thing going, and you like to think, oh, gee, you'll just be hurt a little bit. There's one that came down. We're working now for a broker who got tapped pretty hard, but when the bond claims were filed, there was $1.9 million in bond claims.
Wow.
And now do you want to guess? Now, who wants to guess how long the broker was in business? Less than 6 months.
Oh my God! And he's back to
Yeah,
wherever he came from.
less than 6 months.
Oh my God!
And guess what? All the people that got defrauded were defrauded by a carrier who'd been in business less than 6 months and had the same founding officer as the broker who did it.
Oh man.
Now you talk about something that just plain stinks to the high heaven.
Wow!
I tell you
And
what.
now I want to take a poll. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell me what states you think these two fraudsters were domiciled.
Illinois.
How could you get that wrong? How could you get that wrong? It's not Illinois.
Not Illinois?
No. It's the home of the West Coast Freight Ferries. It's California.
Oh man.
If there's somebody on the phone from Rancho Cucamonga, I'm sure it's a pretty place to live. But it's Dodge City when it comes to the chasing addresses of people who don't already pay their bills.
Well, I think it's a lot cheaper to live there now than it was because everybody there has moved to Nashville. So I understand.
I don't know. I don't know. There's still something intoxicating in the air. But really, I think that there was once a big truck stop out at Rancho Cucamonga, and back when they had the call boards and a lot of that stuff was done up close and personal. Because I guess it's got a strange name, but it's I kind of tracked it all through my career, and every once in a while they'll pick up and it's either Glendale or Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah, because they are industrial. They're industrial areas. Hank, we're getting the hour's going quickly, and I want to get your opinion. And I know they've given an extension for it on something that's before your house now on speed limiters in the U.S. We've had them in Ontario and Quebec for 15 or maybe longer, 15 years. What's your opinion on them?
Well, my opinion is certainly not as valuable as somebody who drives a truck. But I can tell you that I think it'll kill more people than it'll save. I came in from the lake, and I-40's full of trucks, and Tennessee's out there finishing the potholes. So when they do, all of a sudden it says lane ending ahead. And if there's a whole bunch of traffic, that truck may be 3/4 ahead of the car in the closing lane. And if he's got a speed limiter and can't get ahead, what in the hell is he going to do other than come to a dead stop and wait for somebody to hit him? I mean, I just think that to take that away is taking away a safety device in some measure. I mean, if you want to have it so that the truck goes off and it rings at the home terminal or whatever, I don't. In terms of lead, that's one thing, but to keep a guy with as congested as the interstates are, to limit his ability is just crazy. I'll tell you, my speed limiters on my car has got me set to do 75 or 80 miles an hour just to keep up with traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, police on 40. I hope I don't get killed for this. But boy, if I average less than 70 miles an hour, I'd get run over.
Yeah.
Or I'd be stuck in the slow lane behind the farmers. I just think it's a good idea, but in practice, I'd hate to be driving an 18-wheeler and have be out of the road lane and couldn't get left. What do you do? Sit there until daytime traffic is over?
Well, that's exactly what happens. Or you have two trucks and one's trying to pass the other, and he just doesn't have enough horsepower to get up to speed quick enough, and it certainly messes up traffic in that left lane.
Well, I mean, I would think it all sounds really good and fine until until there's some multi-fatality accident. And the truck driver said, well, nobody let me in.
Yeah, and it happens, and I'm sure you've seen it happen a lot. A lot of times in your legal career.
Yeah. So I don't know what is your guys' take on it, Rico? You're the guy that's actually sees what it's like to drive one.
I'm not a big fan of the necessarily the speed limiters. I think that I'm by no means am I advocating, driving out here like a madman or anything like that. I just think that at the end of the day, safe, and most owner operators at the end of the day, they're a lot more safe than your guys that are coming out of school because it's their particular equipment. And most owner operators that they care about their equipment and from the standpoint of the way it looks, the way it maintaining itself, and of course because they want to get back home.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I think that most guys with the experience owns their own trucks. They're doing it to take care of them and things of that nature. And when it comes to a speed limiter situation, like you said, I think you get into a situation where you got so many of the different mega carriers that are governed down at a certain speed, and then you get two of those guys that one of them might have a little bit better horsepower than the other one, and then you got two of those guys that are clogging up the highway or something like that because it shows you can go 5-10 miles with those guys just riding side by side and nobody can get anywhere. So I don't think that I think that it will cause more problems than it will solutions at the end of the day, and hopefully we get enough people to write in and comment. I'm not sure if the comment section has the comment period already ended, or we still got a little time left for.
I don't know. I figure that it is such a generic problem, and I figure all of industry should pretty well say, hey, the safety is not well thought out. But I really haven't been tracing it the way I should. But let's give you an example. Part of the way home today was down old U.S. Highway 70. So they're divided lines, and you can see where you pass.
Right.
Anybody that says that they've gotten out in a passing lane and haven't seen that they have got to exceed the speed limit to safely get around the truck rather than slam on the brakes and try to get behind is a liar. I mean, I just see that happening on a traditional 2-lane with some frequency, and at that point, the safest thing to do is to break the speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I just think it's going to cause it definitely is going to cause more problems. The whole thing of unintended consequences. I think it's going to cause more problems than it will good. So I
think that's the real problem with most of what's going on in Washington. You may have a philosophical difference with someone, but at some point, there's just no honest dialogue and analysis of the pros and cons. Everybody seems to be so buried down. I really feel like this. It's a culture shift in terms of defining the role of how now do that we work. I can't tell you how many people after COVID have found that they're more productive working at home, and they don't want a 9 to 5. Listening to Dolly Parton the other day, working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. And it's gotten to the point that it's not just the owner operators that want to be productive and get miles and get home. It's everybody else in the workforce.
People don't want to spend the hours commuting, from the suburbs to the downtown core to their offices, especially now with the cost of putting gas in a car. They don't want to be spending all that extra money. It was really funny. 2 weeks ago, I took my 95-year-old mother to downtown Toronto to get something notarized. And she said to me, where's all the people? This was 12 noon on a Friday, downtown Toronto. And I said, Mom, they're not working in these buildings anymore. They're all working from home. That's the new world. And she was shocked, and she hadn't been downtown in, a number of years. But that is our new world.
Well, you talk about the Nashville phenomena. They were going to blast through limestone to put an underground down here so we could bring all of our little workers downtown real quick. And after the COVID, nobody talks about that.
No,
everybody's perfectly happy to stay on the farm and commute in.
Yeah.
Telecommute.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the time. We definitely have blown through the hour. I just want to let everyone know you can find all things Hank Seaton over at transportationlaw.net. I dropped a link down in the chat to that you can go click on to go get his book, Rules of the Road. Definitely, I call it the Transportation Bible. You definitely need to have at least one copy, if not two. One to keep in the office, one to keep in the truck. It's definitely, when it comes to understanding different things and contracts, things that you may not be aware of, it definitely was an eye-opener when I first got into the industry and I read it, and it let me know exactly how much stuff I didn't know, and what I need to be aware of as a small independent owner-operator carrier operating under my own authority. I think that it'll definitely help clear up a lot of misconceptions that you may or may not have. And Hank has always been so gracious enough to come on to our show. He has been a long-standing member, gracious enough with his time, at least probably once a month to come on to the show and just hang out with us and go back and forth and share his expertise. And we're always eternally grateful for having Hank on the show with us. With that being said, Hank, is there anything you'd like to say before we close out?
No, I'll tell you, I would covet people's ideas about some of these things. I really think that probably our audience is being underrepresented. They circulated a real hatchet job. It was funny and it was well done, but you look at it and you say that's not the portrayal of the owner operators that I understand. Of the small business aspect of it. And I really think I think we're facing a real philosophical shift of whether we're going to be nanny state when it comes to blue collar entrepreneurs, or whether they're going to have equal opportunity with the other professionals. Accountant, I can hang that my shingle and be a businessman any day I want to. And the owner operator, he's got real skin in the game and should have the same rights and remedies. I would think be treated fairly, but I don't think that's an issue that's being very well emphasized. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Absolutely. Someone texted in and let us know that the comment section is still open on the speed limiter issue as well. So make sure that you go in and put your opinion in on the comment section on the FMCSA website when it comes to things and that's one thing that we have to do a better job of in the trucking community. We have to do a better job of being more politically proactive when it comes to issues that directly affect our industry and our well-being and our livelihoods. We have to do a much better job of making sure that our voices are heard. And too often we just don't participate in the process, and therefore when we get whatever we get, we don't have a lot of room to complain about it.
I think people have gotten to the point where they don't think their voice is going to be heard regardless of how loud they yell.
Why should I bother? Why should I bother voting? Doesn't matter anyways. There's an attitude, a prevailing attitude towards that.
Yeah, I really don't have an argument for that, because especially with the experience and the treatment that we've experienced under a few different administrations, it definitely is the case. Chuck, we getting ready to wrap it up, buddy. Anything? Definitely let the people know how they can get in contact with you.
If anybody needs a hand with anything with their business, if they're having some issues or they want to get set up with one of the traffic's offices, please reach out to me. I'm glad to help them. You can send me an email, put your phone number on it, because quite often it's just quicker for me to call you. Just email me, chuck@traffics.com, or you can call me. My extension is going to change because we're redoing our phone system. For the time being, though, it's still extension 203. Phone number is 800-388-4352, or send me a private message on Instagram at Chuck Snow CEO. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in the hole for another week.
Absolutely. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you guys, our audience, for taking time out to check us out. Whether you're looking at us live or if you're looking at a replay of the show, we definitely appreciate it. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us. We're always eternally grateful for you doing so. So for Hank Seaton, Chuck Snow, this has been the Racing Lanes podcast. We're signing out till the same time, same place next week. Stay safe out there, everyone. Stay healthy. God bless you and good night.
Good night.
Catch you on the flip flop. God bless.